welcome to Ubercube, the podcast where we discuss all things cube, but with refreshments. This is your host, Anthony Adams, aka Uberbear, and today I'm joined by my favorite host.
Hi, it's me, Stu.
Hi, Stu. How are you?
I'm kidding. It's me. Yeah,
I know, but you were putting on that wonderful little British accent just for a second there. Here, can we hear your best British?
Well,
British. Yeah, do your best, Stu. I want to hear your best, Stu.
Little bottle of
there
water.
You go. Governor. So, May, you were kind of telling me a little bit before we started talking. You had a chance to play your fake cube recently. I want to hear a little bit about it before we get going.
I did. Yeah. So, not only did I get to play it, I also got to make the land station for it, which is something that I've been talking about for a while, where I basically took this wooden circle and put in a bunch of mushrooms around it to make it like a mushroom, like a little fairy circle, and then set up the little land station by cutting out the art from a bunch of Lorwyn lands, and then putting them so that way they're all connected, because in case you didn't know, the Lorwyn lands actually do connect together.
Oh, I actually don't think I knew that, and I actually have them all, too. That's amazing. Now I'm going to do that as soon as we get off the show. I was unawares. That's pretty cool. Learn something new every day, don't we? Hey, so before we go down this topic, and this topic is going to be about non-magic cube inspirations, we're going to do the thing that we always do here at Ubercube, and we're going to have our libations of the show, and we're going to start out with the lovely May. May, what are you having on this delightful Friday?
So, I'm actually keeping it really low effort today and just having a strawberry lemon basil quirk.
Actually sounds pretty nice. I'm going to have to get me a quirk. I am having some Buffalo Trace because I was feeling a little bourbony here. And that's actually hard to find in North Carolina. Not such a big deal in the rest of the country, but it's one of those premium chase things here in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. You have to wait for a lottery to get it, but you can go literally to CVS in Michigan and get it for retail. You go here, you pay that premium. It's pretty nuts. Hard to find. But we're not here to talk about bourbon. I could talk about bourbon all day if I wanted to, and scotch. These are some of my favorite things. But we're actually going to talk about a question that I presented on the internet that we kind of talked about. And it was all, when I say the internet, I mean I put it on everything. I put it on Reddit. I put it on MTG Cube Talk. I put it on Bluesky. I put it on Twitter. I put it on the Facebook MTG drafting page. And I got quite a few responses, and I wanted to share that. And here was the question. Question for the community. What non-MTG context inspired your cube, i.e. literature, albums, movie experiences? We want to know. Include your cube link, experience, names, and pronouns. Pretty straightforward stuff. Just kind of want to know a little bit about them. And I got some really cool responses, May, and I kind of wanted to talk about it. But before we do, I'm going to ask you a question. Have you ever been inspired on one of your cube designs by just some medium that was outside of the normal range of Magic?
Yes. Well, so for starters, obviously it's the fake cube, and it's based around things like Grimm's fairy tales and a bunch of miscellaneous European folklore. But I was also working on that kaiju cube that I've mentioned with you before.
Which we sat around watching Godzilla movies when you were in town. That was great.
Yeah, I've had my Storytime cube, which was very D&D focused, just because it was at the time when AFR came out. And then as soon as Baldur's Gate came out, it just completely took over the entire environment of just everything D&D was already made for me. So that was pretty nice. But it's very common for me to look at a piece of media and wonder, how could I make a cube environment that would reflect that? Like, one of the obstacles in the fake cube is that I've been wanting to make the Goblin King in there as the labyrinth.
Right.
As
oh
a
my
reference.
Gosh, yes. You got me with the labyrinth. That is amazing. I actually had one myself, too. This was a weird one. When I first took my engineering traveling job that I have 11 years ago, I was playing prior every Thursday. I'd meet up with the folks in Raleigh. We would stay in the apartment complex. We had a big meeting conference room, and every single Thursday we would get together and we'd play. At the time, we were playing Commander mostly. I don't recall if we had played Cube at that point. That may have been introduced somewhere along that path. But at this point, we're pretty much, it was every Thursday, excited to get off work, 6:30, ordering pizza, drinks, big empty conference room, play amazing argumentative games of Commander. But then I took this job, and I started getting on airplanes. And originally, they kind of told me it would be light travel. Well, I was, at the time, this is just a reference here, The highest tier with Delta is a diamond, and within 7 months, I was a diamond, just to give an indicator of how frequently I was sitting on an airplane bouncing around the country, and I had nowhere to play Magic, and I was bored out of my mind, sitting inside of a Hampton Inn, nothing else better to do, and I like to write. We've talked about this before. And I was just so bored, and I was flipping through Magic cards while my buddies are texting me saying, oh, we're having this wonderful time playing Commander, and I'm seeing the group text popping off. I'm like, whatever, I'm just going to go look at I looked at, I think, the Gatherer at the time, and I saw the card Joven, and I'm like, holy crap, Joven literally speaking to me. I'm bored out of my mind in this hotel room. So I just started writing this entire, on Tapped Out at the time, this was the media, I wrote an entire album based around Joven, integrating the idea of Master of Puppets and basically hair bands. 80s meets a little bit of Metallica is kind of what I was doing, even though they existed then. And I made myself an entire album cover, which later became the Munson Cube years later. But I put that thing on Tapped Out, and it was like my most liked Commander deck that never actually occurred. It was just funny. People loved the idea of all these stupid hair metal bands that I made out of Magic cards. And I'm like, you know what? I can convert that into a cube. And we actually had a great episode with our good friend Stephen Conefall. And I'm going to go ahead and include that in the show link just because people get a kick out of it just hearing Stephen sing Master of Puppets. But it is fantastic. That was music provided me a medium and an opportunity to write, and then I was able to convert that writing, my love for writing, into a cube. And sometimes that's what makes a cube so special.
Mm-hmm.
Another version of that, and one last one, I was again traveling, bored out of my mind, and I love No Doubt. And Gwen Stefani came on the radio. I think I was in Nebraska at the time working at a university doing some energy work, and it was I'm Just a Girl. And I was thinking,
oh, I'm just a girl.
Yeah. And that is literally how the FemCube came to life. I'm like, oh, my gosh, I could build a cube. That music just popped in my head. And I'm like, so I couldn't wait to get home and just start writing down these ideas that I had for the FemCube based off of that Gwen Stefani No Doubt song. So that's just many of the multitude of examples that you can have as a curator that you didn't know you're going to become a curator, but you can just be inspired.
Yeah, like sometimes you can find inspiration in a lot of places that I feel like are unexpected, and when it comes to Cube, more so than any other format in Magic, this is a place where you can actually use these cards as a creative interpretation of things that inspire you. Finding your muses in life and then translating them into a game experience is a lot of fun.
It's definitely an opportunity for basically other medium to translate to another form of art. And sometimes, it is a challenge at first. We talked about this. We talked about like with the Munson Cube where I play music and then the card art helps translate that vibe. But if I take one of those away, suddenly it's lost. It is very much propped up by that medium, right? It needs Bourbon, Metallica, and the Munson Cube. Because we played it in a library with, tap water, it wouldn't feel the same. That's the whole point. There is that degree of that, and trying to get others to see that inspiration can have its own challenges said within. And I do have a prime example of this, and we're going to have a future episode about this because I think you'll dig this. Our good friend Nathan, we've talked about this before, is just like Ghostbusters, everything. Just can't wait for whatever version of Ghostbusters is coming out. So he went out and built himself a Ghostbusters cube. And that's an example of taking one medium, a movie, and then turning it into cube. And Stu made the reference. He was so lucky because they recently printed a Ghostbusters Universes Beyond. So he cheated a little bit during the Doom conversation. But it is a great example of how we can take external references and then pull them into the game and allow us to present a form of art to our play group.
Yeah, it's particularly fun when it starts the search for cards. Like, when we're going out of our way to fill a particular hole. Like, there was a period in the Fake Cube when I had Arkelos and Quain in there because I wanted to have the turtle in the hair. I wanted to introduce some of the Aesop's fables, which we don't really get a lot of through Eldraine or Lorwyn, right? But it got a little bit easier for me to consider those when things like Bloomburrow came out. And for a lot of people, I feel like this is the starting point for their cubes, is what is the inspiration to start that hunt? What is the thing that I'm searching on Scryfall for, right?
Yeah, I think sometimes we can get overly entangled in the mechanics and wanting it to play well. This is kind of what we've talked about. And this is a great ground zero starting point. It doesn't have to be like, I need to make a cube that's equally balanced or has spreadsheet aesthetics about it or any of the above. Sometimes it is as simple as I am literally listening to Master of Puppets I'm just going to keep playing this entire album. I like it. I'm going to flick through Scryfall and I'm going to enter cards. And then you're just going to make like this pile. And we've talked about it. At first, it's a pile. And then you continue down that soundtrack and you switch over, because I just did my Spotify, I guess, the songs of the year kind of thing. So if you look at mine, it's kind of weird. We talked about it. It basically starts out with Ghost and it transitions over to Metallica. And next thing you know, it's Cannons. So I'm sitting there listening to these different types of vibe of music. So as I'm sorting through this Scryfall list and I'm entering, I can suddenly kind of like transform the medium into suddenly looking like a cube by entering it from Scryfall into Cube Cobra, seeing what it looks like. And this does tether quite well to our kind of our lost projects episode we just did recently, the failed projects and where they stick. That's kind of where some of these kind of got stuck, is because they weren't formulaic. They were kind of using this type of emergent design where we're taking an outside of Magic medium and trying to convert it to something, and it doesn't always stick. So let's kind of get to it. So we've got some community responses we want to roll up into, because that's the whole point of this episode, is the inclusion of the community into the question. And to reiterate the question for the community: what non-MTG context inspired your cube designs, i.e. literature, albums, movies, and experiences? We want to know. So we did get some really great responses, and we got some that I feel were extremely authentic. And what I liked about some of the responses, May, is that some of them were almost like they were authentic. Some of them were apologetic, because it is kind of it's an open-ended question to begin with, right? Like I literally just said, tell me what inspired your cube that's not Magic, right? So I got this wide variety of responses on the internet, and people are asking in their questions, I'm not sure if this meets what you're asking of me. And I'm like, heck yeah, it does. They were a little like caught off balance here a little bit when I'm saying, yes, that is exactly what I'm asking you. It has nothing to do with Magic, and it inspired you. And the first one we got was from Steve Man. And for those people that are not familiar with Steve Man, you can find he's very prolific on a lot of the forums, MTG Salvation, if I'm not mistaken, in addition to on Cube Cobra, where you can find Steve Man's write-ups, mostly centered around vintage, or at least, I don't want to say that solely, where new sets come out, and Steve does a wonderful job of like evaluating cards and telling you kind of where they lie in terms of power level, what he likes about them, what he doesn't like about them, etc. And I really do appreciate it. Something I look forward to every like new set, which we joke that's every month and a half. That's hard to write that way, but it is really cool to have someone out there doing that. And what Steve said was anything entertainment, restaurants, music, concerts, theme parks, film, TV, museums, books, etc. Basically, somebody who lived their first half of their life as a professional musician and entertainer, it's all about capturing an emotionally resonant experience regardless of your medium size. I think in a nutshell, that's what we're trying to say. It's, you're walking down, you're listening on your iPod, or I'm old here, I'm saying iPod, but you're listening to your favorite playlist and you hear a song, it pops in your head and you're like, oh man, I want to build a Magic deck out of that. That's kind of how this starts. It's a cool way of doing it. And I think Steve put that so eloquently.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like that Steve has a pretty good understanding of how to take elements from the places, the things, and the music that they've heard and interacted with, and translating that into Magic. And taking their professional life as part of it, and putting that artistic expression into their environments is what the heart of Cube is. It is taking something that is personal to you and using Magic cards to kind of reflect that.
And as we kind of talk about some of these that are going to appear on the list, included in the show notes will be the links to the cubes. And I'll also put them whenever I put them up on the Buzzsprout, and they link to the Spotify's and Apple and whatever they hook up to. You'll be able to click on these and see these cubes as we talk about, because we're not going to focus on individual cards. We're just kind of talking about, like we said, literally the idea that came from the ether and then became a cube, whatever medium that basically we're going to call them curators / artists chose to pull from for inspiration and make a cube. And another of the responses that I receive is from our good friend DSB. And DSB, for those that don't know, I love I believe it was the second CubeCon, and I went up and I spoke with DSB, and he he's not a grinder. He wasn't really enjoying at the time. He conveyed to me the competitive aspects of what was ongoing. He really didn't want to play Cube to win. He wanted to play Cube to fun. So DSB went and found a private little section and was taking basically the blank art cards and drawing tokens. And I still have one of DSB's citizen tokens. I think it says City Man on it. And also I have one that says Soup that's for food. That he just doodled out really fast. This beautiful little piece of art for me because he's a professional artist. And he and I kind of got into a conversation, May, that I thought you'd find interesting. He has the Cabbages and King's Cube. And what was so neat is that's basically based off of...
Through the Looking Glass.
Yes, that word. From Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll. And what I loved about this idea is we started talking about it. It's about the vast and terrible economic disparity between the rich and poor. And I go, hey, wait, I got one of those cubes too. It's called the Monopoly. So we actually started chatting. And if you're interested in the Cabbages and King's Cube, you can find it in the MTG Talk Discord. There's a specific project page in there. And I don't mind sharing a link for that, but I thought it was so cool to be able to see people talking about ideas for cards. And it's taken cards that kind of based on the ideas of socioeconomics. And what he's doing is he's splitting the cards. And I don't know the whole gist. It's not in front of me right now, but the gist is kind of older cards are in a certain category within the cube, and modern cards are higher in cost. So he's splitting, kind of playing old Magic and new Magic, but he's making new Magic cost more because it's more powerful because it has more words. I think I got that right. Feel free to correct me, DSB, but it's a really cool idea of Cabbages and Kings. So it took a little Lewis Carroll, May, and then converted it into a cube.
Yeah, I also kind of like it because it's playing with how an environment functions in order to translate what your idea is, what your concept is, and using mechanics in order to translate that rather than just one-for-one examples with cards. And I think that is what can add a lot of personality to cubes like these, and I think that it is a really good job, and I'm glad that DSP was able to share that with you.
Yeah, would you mind picking up the next one by Zavro? Zavro? I think Zavro? I'll get these right eventually. These aren't real human names, so it's always fun.
Zavaro.
So please be patient with the lack of ability to read some of these names. But would you mind taking on this one because it's really cool? And there's a lot of links I will include for this one as well.
Yeah, so Zavaro has this Mox and Signet show, a powered cube. Right? And that's the one we're going to be talking about?
Yep, the Tucson Mox and Signet show where they're... Oh, yeah, Tucson sounds pretty good, though. It's very metallic. But I'm leaving that. I'm not cutting that, May, because I mess up so much. You get one.
Look, I'm doing my best. We're helping.
There's a lot of words on here.
But what they explained was that they used to make fun little posters for their cube based off of films, books, and whatnot. And how they explained it was that they enjoyed... I'll just say what they said word for word to make things easier. I used to make fun little posters for my cube based on films and sometimes books. I enjoyed more recently changed the name of the Power Cube to celebrate the pun and the big local event, the Tucson Gem and Mineral Show. Do not have any signets in there anymore, but the talisman doesn't roll off the tongue as well. And it's neat because it's a way that it's taking a cube that they've put a lot of effort into and then making content around it, similar to how I created the little fairy ring for the Fae Cube in order to help get people hyped up for it, creating posters and whatnot in order to push what the identity of your cube is wonderful. And I think that it's a cool way that you can not only take the inspirations from what made your cube, but also the inspirations for how to present your cube. And things like that are really cool.
Yeah, I think taking the idea of gems and minerals and making an aesthetic based around it. And it's basically what I liked about this story and what was attached to this idea, it was kind of like a memory. It's an event that this individual likes to go to. It sparked joy in their hearts, and they wanted to build a cube that celebrated this idea of this, rocks and minerals. And it's just really cool in tungsten/Tucson, which is really neat. Sorry, May, I got to get one. I got 2 digs in there. I got one more left before the end of the episode. But it's fun. I mispronounce things all the time, so it is my turn.
We'll just start getting a little...
Yeah, we're going to keep a scoreboard.
Bingo sheet and have mispronouncing
by
words
Anthony.
On the bingo
By Anthony specifically. Yeah, oh my God. English is not my strong suit. This next one we got, May, I'll go ahead and grab this one really quick because this one gave me some lulls. Sure. And this is from Hot Gear 364. And what was fun is they built a cube, and I'll share this in the show notes, but I just like the premise of it. What if Jar Jar Binks designed a cube? You know, the total Sith of the Star Wars canon, right? I mean,
yes, basically. He should have been. But anyways.
I thought that was so neat. And then there's a secondary cube that I'll include in here as well, too. And again, these will all be in the show notes because I think individually we would not have time to represent them properly. I kind of wanted to go into this is more about the medium, right? This person wanted to see if Jar Jar Binks made a cube, so it's Star Wars representative, and then they're going to make card choices based on that idea. And that's not something that normally sprang to someone's head, but there's comedy involved with that. The next one that this individual made was the Aqua Teen Hunger Belt episode. I never watched Aqua Teen Hunger Force, but
I've also never watched Aqua Teen Hunger
But
Force.
Fun fact, my little sister did have a friend when they went to SCAD that did work on the development team and was one of the artists on Aqua Teen Hunger Force, which I thought was really cool. I just never got around to watching it, but I suppose I must now that I am now reading this out loud. But they've basically taken an episode that they enjoyed from that show, and I think what is that on? It's not Cartoon Network. It's on the late night version of it. Which one is that? Adult Swim? Is that an Adult Swim type thing?
Yeah, Adult Swim's the late night version.
Yeah, I probably have to give it a choice. I've heard good things about it. I've just never actually turned it on, but here we are. But I think that's really neat. They took a medium they enjoyed, and they have once again converted into cubes. Now they've got 2 in their belt, which is pretty great.
Yeah, and I'm glad that they were able to find very specific examples.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, especially in the context of Jar Jar Binks, where it's just like, sure, we can take a top-down value of, yeah, sure, it's a Star Wars cube, but what if Jar Jar Binks was the one designing it? Horrifying as a concept.
Absolutely, Goofy. Thank you for submitting that. We appreciate you. This next one here we had, this one caught my eye. I thought this one was rather profound. And this is from our good friend Joe. And Joe Anderson has his own podcast as well, and I will include that in show notes as well, where Joe talks about his week in magic and also about like some pretty serious points. But I think Joe's done a great job. I recently listened to Joe's last episode, and May, if I had described this as moving, I wouldn't even be giving it justice. I'm sitting in the airport, literally feeling, I guess, everything that Joe's putting into the microphone. So Joe, huge shout out to what you're doing. I appreciate it. I will include a link to your podcast in the show notes, and I think people should check it out. I think it's really great. It's just really honest and raw, May. It's talking about basically this is what I did this week during Cube. I played this and this and this. But occasionally Joe does take on some tough subjects. And then Joe also does a good job of letting you know, skip forward to this part if you don't want to hear it. But I think it really, how we kind of try to do this, I guess, this happy, uplifting portion. And that is fun and people want that. Joe does sometimes takes content and makes it real. And sometimes people need that too. And so, Joe, I appreciate you sharing with us, and it's truly, truly appreciated. But let's talk about what Joe submitted. Joe put in my Trinity Cube, and it was inspired by arguing with Parker over the singleton, the Christian concept of the triune God, basically the Trinity, I guess is what he's saying, and the number 3. Everything is basically based on 3. Super invested. So when I looked at this cube, it's 3 of. So it's like 3 Ren and 6s. It's very powerful. But
the Holy
Trinity is what they wanted to go into. And I thought that was a pretty heavy subject to pull in something like that and then translate in the cube. But again, that's another form of inspiration is Joe's conversation on religion and theology. I just think that's pretty wild, and I think it's cool. I can appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that I can have a greater appreciation for people who want to introduce concepts of spiritual beliefs and whatnot into their cubes and then translate the things that people believe in as a way to bring in those cards, let's say, into a way that's translatable and I would almost say thought-provoking. And it's just another avenue that you can use Cube as an artistic piece rather than just a flat, here are the best cards, but rather having ways to use cards in order to create thought-provoking discussions with people in regards to the Holy Trinity and how you're trying to represent that and whatnot. And I think that is cool.
I do too. And that's kind of where, as I'm thinking about that one, I'm drawing comparisons to my FEM where, yes, there are cards in there that are powerful, but at the same time, I've got a message in there. And for certain parts of the table, it may spark discussion, right? I mean, ultimately, that, yeah, sure, go play the cube, have a great time, enjoy your night of Magic. But on the rare occasion, two people at the table start talking about, women and how they're represented in Magic, or perhaps it sparks some kind of debate. And I'm okay with that, right? You can have layers to this medium where we can take this, even going back to the Holy Trinity and talking about that. You could spark a conversation about politics or religion if your group is okay with that, or you can find your own ways of implanting. It's just artistic expression. That's ultimate. You're putting paint to canvas, and then what people see in it, they see in it, right? And some people will be inspired by it, and others might be reviled by it. There's nothing you can do about that. But I think that is kind of what these types of cubes can do. Sure, I play a cube. It has 3 things in it. Cool. Or it has 3 things in it. Why do you have 3 things in it? Joe, what are you doing this for? And then suddenly you have this really cool little conversation you can have, right? I think it's neat.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't mind taking...
I mean, it's one of the big reasons why I have, like, angels in the fake cube, right?
Right.
Because it introduces discussion, because people are like, wait, angels aren't supposed to be fairy tales. And it's like, yes, you are correct. However, they were introduced because of how they were being overwritten over time. It's why you can see this in Twilight Shepherd in Shadowmoor. Right?
I think it's so cool. Would you mind? And thank you, Joe, for submitting that. I think it's great. And again, I will include a link to the podcast. It's really fun. It's raw. I love it. The next one I'm going to have here is I'm going to have May. Could you please cover Crimson Yoshi's cube? It's the spikeless cube, and they're going to change it. But check out what they've done here. They're revitalizing, changing, rebranding. And I know a little bit about rebranding because I had to do this with your help on my Fem cube. So I think this is neat. Would you mind reading Crimson Yoshi's little excerpt here to the audience? I think it's really cool.
Yeah. So Crimson Yoshi said, I've been thinking about this recently. I've been currently on hiatus from developing my main cube, but when I return to it, I will probably end up doing a rebranding as the Hackett cube. I don't dislike the name Spikeless cube, but I've recently begun to feel that it doesn't get at the heart of what the environment is about. Then I remembered a Science Channel show from the early 2010s called Stuck with Hackett, in which the host, Chris Hackett, collected obtainium, aka random garbage, in order to create unexpected machines and mechanisms. It was short-lived, but really cool while it lasted, and the gameplay experience I wanted to cultivate was one where you take seemingly random garbage and discover ways to turn it into cool and powerful synergies. I've been working on lowering the power and increasing the spread of the cube throughout the time to create a sense of organized chaos.
It's a lot to read. We can go ahead and we'll put a pin in it now, but I think the gist is it. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot, but we kind of get the idea because this individual had this show that they enjoyed very much, and they don't necessarily like them. They've already created the cube. The spikeless cube already exists, but this kind of goes in something different. I kind of said the question, what inspired the creation of your cube? But I think this equally applies, mate, is does this creation of this cube, this idea, what you're trying to translate, the conversations that you want to spark from that medium, are they actually being sent out? And I think I really appreciate this. It's an afterthought. I'm going to rebrand this. This isn't what I wanted this to be. It got lost in the sauce, as you like to call it, right? So I think this is really neat that Crimson Yoshi kind of has this, you get me a lot. You get me a lot, May. This is why I stuck you with those 2 mispronunciations, because you're like, Anthony, there's trees in that forest, not just a forest. You say this to me often. And I think this is a fine example where Crimson Yoshi's taking a step back and going, hey, this isn't necessarily what I felt when I made this, and I'm going to rebrand it. So I think that also deserves an equal conversation in this, right? Post the cube. I want to make it different. This is what I want.
Yeah, sometimes being inspired by external sources can be what you need in order to add the identity to your pre-existing cube or whatnot, as a way to represent what you've already been trying to work on and whatnot, and add your own personality and flair onto it in post. Like, we talk a lot about how we would start a cube and start with a theme and start with an idea and whatever, but starting with, like, just a bunch of cards and then trying to slowly improvise that environment into this idea and then finding out what the identity is later to rebrand it as is also totally fine. That is just a thing that a lot of people should be okay with doing, is just taking a bunch of cards, slowly working your way up into the point where you're feeling like you're happy with it, and then give it the identity. Like, the fake cube was not initially the fake cube, right? It was initially just a cube. However, what ended up happening was that over time, I was able to slowly add more and more of an identity to it because I had so many cards that I loved that I wanted to represent it with, and added it in post before it actually became the fake cube. And a case like this is exactly where some people need to go, where you have the idea for an environment, and then you're working your way through the process of branding it, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. Thank you for putting that in, Crimson. We appreciate it. This next one we have, and this is a game that I'm actually interested in. I've walked past this one, believe it or not, in Target 40 times, and I'm going to have to now go purchase this. Thank you very much for that, Trainmaster GT.
I will also recommend...
Is it really good? Is it good? I mean, I like
I have it in mind, and it's pretty fun.
I dig these games.
It's the kind of game that you want to play if you're looking to play with people who aren't looking for the complexity of Magic.
Yeah. I like Exploding Kittens. We play that on occasion. We've got Dungeon Mayhem. We play these little card games. They're really great for the pub, so I think I'm going to pick this one up. But the name of this cube by Trainmaster GT is the Unstable Cubicorn, which I thought was really neat. And it's basically low complexity battle box. And I just thought that was so neat. Basically, Trainmaster writes in and says, "Hi, Ubercube. My Unstable Cubicorns battle box was designed to emulate the user-friendly game design of the game Unstable Unicorns, as it means to help teach new players how to play Magic," which I think, if I'm not mistaken, I would say Foundations is probably really cool to helping that idea out, because I can only see that. So, Crimson, reach out to me. I'm curious. What has Foundations done for this cube idea? And I will share this in the show notes as well, too. But I think that's so neat. And it's reminiscent of what we talked about, where I wanted to take Battle Chess. I want to take the Monopoly. I want to bring them to life, right? These games that I'm pulling from external ideas and translating it. It's so neat. Now I kind of want to build an Exploding Kittens. I mean, that's got to be a 180 cube, right, May? I feel like there's opportunity there.
I mean, it's imagine if you were playing a game where essentially every time that a creature of yours connected, you did the infamous Cruel Claw effect. However, there's always a phage in your deck.
That would be amazing.
Like a shared deck where it's like a Cruel Claw deck, but you both start off with like a Cruel Claw trying to hit each other, and then playing cards off the top, and ways that you can try to negate the phage. Right?
Did we just make a new Dan, like an opposite Dan, where you don't want phage to enter the battlefield, so you try to brainstorm it down?
Opposite.
Oh, we're gonna do that. Yeah, don't let phage come out.
That would just be so fun. Where it's like chaos warping whatever your creature is to try to force them to get phage on the board.
Fractured identity, everybody gets a phage. You can do phage and leveler and just have fun. Like, oh god, leveler came up. Nice. Okay, we're going to build that now. Thank you very much. We appreciate you, Trainmaster GT. That's fun, and I think it's really cool when we see these projects that take card games and board games. You know, obviously I have my own personal bias, but I just think it's really neat when people take that idea. I would like to hear from the community, going on that subject, what other games have you taken and translated into cubes or battle boxes or whatnot? I think that's really neat. Thanks again. I appreciate the submission. This next one we have is from Elon Bust at Bluesky. Just got what we're actually reading there. That's pretty funny. But, you know, when I'm looking at these names, I'm like, oh God, please don't say anything bad. But here we are. That one's funny. So what this one's about, and this cube will be included, it's basically Twilight, a.k.a. the cube version of the Twilight Saga New Moon soundtrack. So now I've actually saved this one, but I'm going to listen to this soundtrack because I'm not a lover of that movie series, but I do recall the music being pretty cool. So I'm willing to give it a try. But I think that's neat that they let this music, again, going back to the Bunsen cube or any of these types of cubes, inspire the idea of designing an environment.
Yeah, I do think that it is cool, especially when it's taking inspiration from music in particular, because music doesn't really have a visual media for you to really translate to cards, but similar to your Munson cube as an example, right? Where it's a type of vibe that you're trying to recreate. And I find it really cool when you can kind of mesh what the musical vibe is with the playing vibe.
Oh, I agree 100%. You know, sometimes that would be advice I would give someone building their first cube or trying to brainstorm their first cube. Put on your favorite soundtrack. Listen to what type of music inspires you. and it'll give you a chance to kind of clear your headspace, and then maybe, just maybe, switch up your genre a little bit. Put on something a little different. Let it go random. Spin that wheel a little bit and see what music pops up. And then maybe you'll be able to draw, I guess, inspiration from that and start putting basically words onto paper. That it sounds harder than it is, but it can be that simple. You just need to start with a few and start adding them, and over time, it'll grow into a cube and it'll form itself. We've talked about this a lot of times this episode. We get a little preachy about it, but you can just mash up a bunch of cards and make a cube. You can refine it later. I keep my aesthetics, my spreadsheet aesthetics are like perfectly symmetrical-ish, right? I've been talking about that with other people online, but it's not necessary. That's just a personal choice I make. I like to kind of try to build it out with subcategories and a framework, but you can just play some music and go, oh man, I really like Ghost, for example, and I'm going to start building a cube. Or I like, I don't know, we'll just say country music or whatever. It doesn't matter what genre you choose. But you can start translating it, and it'll give you inspiration and provide your muse that you might want to design your very first cube. That's the takeaway from this episode. The next one we have, May, is from Zoe Against Genocide. And Zoe, I appreciate the name. I know you've got multiple names, so I'm not certain what the actual tag you're using. I'm looking at it on Bluesky right now. But I thought it was really neat is that I don't think this is what the person said. I don't think the spirit of the question, but Inscription and Slay the Spire were both influential on my forbidden trash cube, and I'm obligated to run Embiggen due to the cromulence. I thought this was really neat. So Embiggen, for those people that they're not certain what this card is for 1 forest to get an instant until in the turn target non-bushwag creature gets +1/+1 for each super type card and subtype card it has. And I love the flavor text. It says flea circus ? No flea circus. And I just think it's fantastic. So took a weird card, took a medium. I've never played Slay the Spire. Have you played that, May?
I have played Slay the Spire. I love Slay the Spire.
Is it digital? Because I've seen it in board game type too. I've seen a couple of versions of it.
It's because they recently came out with a board game.
So what's the gist of that game? I don't know anything about it. Would you mind informing me a little bit here? How's it work?
Yeah, absolutely. So Slay the Spire is, first of all, a kind of roguelike game. So you're trying to make your way and make choices of what rooms that you're trying to go through, and it's mostly randomly generated between runs. Okay? So as you go, you essentially start with a certain amount of cards, and then as you go, you earn new cards, and then can try to remove other cards from your deck. You get different kinds of artifacts and whatnot that change how those cards interact with you, and you're essentially trying to do this sort of deck building while playing. So imagine it like in a draft sense, right? But every time that you pass those cards around, you're essentially using those cards in order to determine what you're getting in the next pack, right? And it's a lot of fun. It is definitely a game that I highly recommend. Not sponsored. It's just a very fun game.
Yeah, I've heard nothing. I think Emma Partlow talked about it for a while, and she mentioned that she was playing it like nonstop. So I'm interested. I just haven't had the time, between the travel and the podcasting and building new cubes, I need to find some new hobbies. So I'm all about it. So I've got a list of things I need to do, May. I need to get Unstable Unicorns. I need to play Slay the Spire. I've got a lot of things. I need to start listening to the New Moon soundtrack. So I've got things that I'm going to do, because I think that's one of the things I'm getting out of this episode is seeing these ideas that other individuals have provided us, and it's providing me inspiration on things that I can try out to see if I can build a cube out of it, right? Like a little 180 or a 360. It doesn't matter. It's just really cool to try different things to see if you can gain inspiration. And we wanted to kind of celebrate what the community here has provided us. And I think this was just really this was a, light social type episode, and I appreciate everyone for their submissions. And I like that everyone put themselves out there and just kind of gave us what helped them to create their cube. And I think that's something to be proud of. So thank you all. Hats off to each one of you. I appreciate it. We also wanted to talk about one of the things that we are going to try to do. We mentioned this on a previous episode, and I posted this up on Bluesky and Twitter and all the other social media, and I'll continue to do so. Stu, and Stu, as you notice, is not with us today because the holidays have begun. And so we've got one more episode we're going to do after this one. And then we'll take a little bit of a break until sometime in January because, we talked about it. We need rest. It'll give me a chance to write some new ideas and put things, have my created ideas and try some of these other medium that people just provided me out. So I'm excited during this little break to try some of these things. So thank you, everyone. We're also going to do a mailbag episode. And it'll probably be more of like, intertwined into a normal episode. I don't think I'm going to do it individually, May. But you can email any question that you have for us about how did we make the show, or what do you want to know about behind the scenes, or cube questions, or whatever you want. We'll give you shout outs. We'll talk about it. And we want to get more people involved with the show. We want to be more of a community. This is a community. We want this show to represent the best of the community, right? That's what we're trying to do here. You can reach us at ubercubemtgpodcast@gmail.com. And I will include that in the show notes. I'm kind of trying to force the email thing a little bit because it makes it a little cuter. But you can reach me out on Discord. We joked about it. Pigeon, Raven, I don't care. It just stops me from having to check 6 different media sources to try to pull all these together. There's only so many places I can check in a given day. But I do appreciate all the submissions. So if you want to reach out to us and ask your questions, feel free to reach out to us. This has been a lot of fun. May, do you have any final thoughts before we start kind of wrapping this one up?
I don't think I have any final thoughts when it comes to what inspires us, what takes our cubes. And I'm not going to lie to you, a lot of my brain has been spinning the wheels about an old cubes inspiration that I had because I grew up watching a lot of cartoons, and I called the cube Toon World. And it's hard to hear how inspired other people are doing without also being like, but I could also just build a cube.
Yeah.
So I always appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, we also kind of do that too. Like as I'm reading these, and it's interesting, we did our failed cube projects episode, and there'll be more to come on this. I'll talk about this extensively in a very soon future episode. But on my battle chest where I'm talking about installed, I've received numerous feedback, and some people have actually modeled their own version of what they think battle chest should look like and shared list. And I think that's so cool because they heard my problem and they're providing solutions. And so as I'm reading these inspirations for other people's cubes, even when I was receiving them, I had to stop myself, the wheels from churning about how I would approach this idea of a cube now that I've learned their muse, if you will, right? And I think that's a little fault we have. But I appreciate everybody and thank you. And this is fantastic. And we're going to move over to the socials. We're going to start out by thanking our Patreons, and we do truly appreciate our Patreons. And if you're interested in becoming a Patreon, you can find us at patreon.com/ubercube. It does go a long way to help us out to, I don't know, we're trying to do more events. We're trying to be more outreach in the community. We want to travel more and just kind of expand our reach a little bit. So that is where the Patreon does come online, believe it or not. It is helpful. It does help do these type things. But thank you, Chris Fitzgerald, Timber Dragon, Brian Christensen, Keaton Schultz, Lord Justice, Chris Singer, Nicholas Lapointe, Preston, and Samuel McKenna. Without you guys, the lights would get turned off here. I'd stop paying my electric bill totally. And if you're interested in following more about the show, I do, and Stu makes this joke all the time, I am an admin for the almost 1,000 people. We're getting really close to 1,000 for the MTG Facebook drafting page. And again, I'm not a Facebook guy. I use it just to, post pictures of food and tell my mom where I'm traveling on rare occasions to look at baby pictures. But this Facebook page is really cool because we do pack one, pick ones. We share, hey, I've got this cube, and it's very friendly and controlled, and I think we make a very safe environment. So if you are a person that's willing to go back to the fold of the Facebook, I do encourage this MTG Facebook drafting page. You can find it at facebook.com/groups/MTGcube. And if you love the show, we would truly appreciate a 5-star review on your favorite podcast player. So that helps us a lot of way too. We've talked about this before. If you don't mind, and I'm doing a little bit of an outreach thing here, if you don't mind going on Spotify and help us out a little bit there, because, we're trying to get the show to grow, get more people to learn about the world of Cube, and having those 5 stars does go a long way. An honest 5 stars is what I'm looking for here, though. If you can give it to us, feel free. Also, Ubercube is an affiliate with Ultra Sleeves. If you use our code, you can get 5% off your purchase, where you can get all that bling. I've got some sweet Ultra Sleeves. I got my Metalworker in an Ultra Sleeve May that I'll never take out. We were just talking about this. I'm working to foil out my Artifact Cube, with the exception of Metalworker, because I love my Ultra Sleeve so much. And plus, Metalworker is stupid expensive, so I'm never going to do it anyways.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's so dumb. I'm not going to do that. But if I were dumb, I'm still going to keep the Ultra Sleeves because it's gorgeous. And it's artists that actually kind of finish out the art, so they extend the borders. It's just beautiful. It slides on there it's a perfect fit sleeve. And all of these have been artist rendered. So I love everything about it. So if you want to find a cool altar that makes people kind of stop, look, and ooh and ah as they pass your cube around, and even ask, is this a real Magic card? I've had that a few times too. I'm like, yeah, please don't pull up my sleeve and ruin it. It's painted, but it's gorgeous. Also, if you want to support the show, please use our Inked Gaming affiliate link, where you can get your playmats, your dice bags, and, as Stu corrected me, your mouse pads / mouse mats, and any other custom stuff. That's where we get all of our Ubercube mats from. You can also reach us at ubercubemtgpodcast@gmail.com, where we're going to be doing our mailbag episode. Also, you can link us on our Ubercube Discord. I will share a invite for that on our show notes. The Discord's popping off, especially the Deck Boasts channel, where people can post up, basically your best and worst decks you've ever built in Cube. It doesn't really matter. It's just really fun to talk about it. And then we've got our patreon.com/Ubercube. And then other than that, May, we're going to say the thing that we always say here at Ubercube, and we're going to say, Happy cubing.